The Commonwealth has accused Karen Reed of striking her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, with her car after a night of drinking and leaving him in the snow to die. The defense is saying, as they said in their opening statement, that Karen Reed was framed and this is all a cover-up. At the morning break on day 16, we have finished the cross-examination, redirect, and recross of witness Jen McCabe. It seems the next witness up in the prosecution's order is Carrie Roberts. I want to know how she ended up there. Like, how did she even show up? Who called her? But then we learned what the horrifying statement was that jogged Jen McCabe's memory into what, oh my God, she's telling them everything meant. And the statement was from Carrie that John really loved his ex, Amy, who seems to be the Bella child's mother. We know way too much about all of these people's lives and their club sports teams at this point, not nearly enough about how a car backed up and hit the victim and what caused the victim to die. We don't know that yet, but we know a lot about everybody's interpersonal relationships and drink orders. But we also heard that the end of that statement was that Karen is just a glorified babysitter. That was the horrific, pearl-clutching, memory-jogging statement. The defense objected to it. It came in anyway. I really think it just goes to the defense's point that there is an inner circle here that Karen is not a part of, and these statements made it very clear that that is the case. Whether that means this is a cover-up, I don't know. But it is very clear that there is a tight circle that Karen is not a part of. That part is very clear at the end of testimony today. We also got into the how's long to die in the snow Google search. Jen McCabe maintains that she never made that search at 2:27 a.m. And at that time, she was searching about basketball things on her phone. We do not have the Celebrate experts in yet, but that is what she maintains. What's difficult is that if that was the only thing, it would be different to be like, okay, I want to see the experts on this thing. But it's not just, I never made that Google search. It's, I never made that Google search. Those phone calls were never answered. Those phone calls were never deleted. Those 6 calls were a butt dial. This other call was a butt dial. This other witness had an amorous butt dial. It's not just the one Google search. It's very, very difficult to parse. What became very clear in recross to me is that this witness says she told numerous people that Karen said, crystal clear, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. But that's not in the reports. That was not in her original grand jury testimony. And it wasn't in her grand jury testimony until June 2023, which we know to be the federal grand jury. But it was in April that this witness said she started being harassed after the how's long to die at the snow text message came to light. And it seems that that came to light in public court proceedings. That's what Alan Jackson said. So the timing of the Google search coming forward and the federal grand jury testimony is interesting to me. But Jackson framed that as, so the statement changed after you started getting harassed. And this witness detailed more than other witnesses the level of harassment she says she has suffered and how she feels about that throughout her testimony. Going real world with people is not okay. No one involved in these cases should be harassed. I say that in every single high-profile case we've covered. We've seen experts run off the internet because they're testifying as experts. We've seen attorneys argue that it's hard for them to find experts for a high-profile case because of the level of harassment they have sustained. So we'll see what happens after the break. We are at the lunch break of day 16 of the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. And we have Carrie Roberts on the stand. Her husband testified much earlier in this trial, and her testimony is a stark contrast from Jen McCabe. She is offering very concise, direct, clear, and linear answers, sometimes confused about the questions coming from Prosecutor Lally, which is fair, but very cogent and linear testimony. It does not seem as if she is adding anything. She is not adding colloquy or story or opinion to it. She is saying what she thinks. The only time she has really added opinion is during talking about Karen Reed having blood on her hands and asking or stating she got her period, that she was saying, no, she must be in shock. She was not overdrawing or adding hyperbole to Karen Reed screaming. She said she was panicked. What was most interesting to me about her direct testimony is that Karen called her that morning, said John is dead, and then continued to say other things. She was going to go get Karen, and then Karen didn't go to where she thought she was going to go. But when she connected with Karen and was on speakerphone in the car, Karen was saying to her, I left him at the waterfall, which is consistent with what Jen McCabe said. But then this witness testified that she heard Jen McCabe say, no, I saw you pull up at 34 Fairview last night. And this witness's testimony was then Karen became very interested in going to 34 Fairview after that comment by Jen. But that's not what I remember from Jen McCabe's direct examination, because Jen said she didn't put it together, that Karen pulled up to 34 Fairview and that was Karen's vehicle. But this witness said, I heard her say, no, we saw you at 34 Fairview. And then Karen's like, we got to go to Fairview. And then this witness said, we need to go out and look for John. I don't know if he's walking. I don't know what he's doing. And Jen and Karen wanted to go to 34 Fairview. And then Carrie was driving to 34 Fairview with Jen giving her directions, with Karen in the car panicking, making calls, texting, leaning forward in between the driver and passenger seat, yelling, sitting back. It's very interesting to see the difference in these testimonies. I'm interested to see what happens when we get to cross. It seems that this witness is not in the group texts. She doesn't know Jen McCabe. This is not her group of friends. Her group of friends is, her husband and John's other friends from when he was growing up, who had kids that were common and mutual friends. The gentleman that were at CF McCarthy's is who she is part of, that friend group, not the group that they all met up with at the waterfall. And that difference is pretty stark. But this witness also does not seem to have any love lost for Karen Reed at all. When asked to identify her, this witness very pointedly said, when asked, do you see Karen Reed in the courtroom? She said, yep. It's going to be interesting to see where we get in the rest of direct and where we get to cross. But so far, this witness has not said once that she heard Karen Reed say, I hit him. She has been very clear in her testimony that she heard Karen Reed saying, did I hit him? We'll see where the rest of the testimony goes. At the end of the day, on day 16 of the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed, we finished with Carrie Roberts, and the defense offered no cross-examination at all of Carrie Roberts. I think it was a smart move. I think the witness came across very credible. She contradicted some of the testimony of Jen McCabe. She was very straightforward. I imagine that there was not much there, not part of the text messages. We know she turned over her phone for a cell phone extraction. Nothing was brought up there. Could the defense recall her in their case? They could, but I don't know why they would need to. I'm surprised, very surprised, that this wasn't one of the state's first witnesses. I thought she was a great witness for, well, both the state and the defense. She seemed to call it like it is and not exaggerate. She didn't editorialize or elaborate. She said what she saw. But you know what she never heard was Karen Reed saying, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. She seemed absolutely, genuinely devastated for the loss of her friend, John O'Keefe. She seemed frustrated about having to testify at all, truly, and by some of Lally's questions. And she made the chaos of the morning when Karen Read was calling everyone trying to figure out what was going on make a bit more sense. She talked about Karen constantly blowing up her phone while Karen was at the hospital and while she was at the hospital, and trying to figure out what was going on with John. We also heard about Karen Read blowing up John's cell phone when they were on vacation over New Year's going into the year of 2022 with the two witnesses that testified at the end of the day, the Sullivans. And the Sullivan sisters testified about their family connection to John. The older sister, Laura Sullivan, had been dating John O'Keefe's best friend, fellow Boston police officer, who is the father of her son. John O'Keefe is the godfather of her son, and John O'Keefe's best friend and her son's father had passed away. She talked about that and how involved in her life and her son's life John O'Keefe was since then, which brings to me another kid in this case who lost someone who was very close to them. And it brought in a lot more of the priority that John O'Keefe put on those he considered family and the kids in his life that he loved. And then we got into testimony about the trip in Aruba that we had heard John O'Keefe's sister-in-law testify to, that he and Karen Read got into a huge argument about it. And that testimony was that John was accused by Karen Read of making out with Laura Sullivan's little sister, Etta Sullivan. Etta testified that John was in the lobby, seemingly intoxicated and stumbling, and gave her a hug. And then as she was walking away, she heard John's name being screamed in the lobby and something like, "Who the fuck is that?" And he was like, "Calm down." When I'm saying he was like, she was like, this is how the testimony came in. "Calm down. That's Laura's little sister." And then she was like, "Go fuck yourself." And then Etta was like, "Well, fuck you too." And that's really all they spoke. And then Etta told her sister Laura, "I don't know if you guys like John O'Keefe's new girlfriend, but she sucks." And that was what the fight in Aruba was about. Laura also testified that Karen apologized, that she offered to pay for part of Etta's room, and that she seemed to regret and misinterpret the situation. So that's where we are with the fight in Aruba. And that was the end of the testimony on day 16. Court is dark on Thursday and will resume on Friday, presumably with the testimony of Brian Higgins. And that I am very interested to see. I want to know how he has a magical disappearing Jeep. I want to know. I want to know all of this stuff. For deep dives into the stories that I covered here, you can find them on my YouTube channel at The Emily D. Baker and The Emily Show podcast. I stream every Tuesday and Thursday. The podcast goes live on Wednesdays. And if you want to stay in the loop with everything I'm doing, receive the fastest notifications out there, and get more Law Nerd community, join me at lawnerdapp.com, our free app for iOS and Android.